Hi guys, welcome back. It's UK here with a video response this morning to Emergent Play's video on player agency, which was posted over the weekend. First off, pardon me, I'm going to point out that my opinions here are purely, my own and that of how I run games and how pretty much all the groups I've had over the last 20 odd years have also been, I suppose is the right way to put it. Pretty much what Emergent Play describes in his video is kind of sandbox play, where the GM is there and they may have scenarios, they may have whatever, but the players control everything pretty much. The players, his example is at one point is, regardless of whatever the scenario is, the players decide they're going to open a strip joint, so that's what your campaign Sunday or your scenario or campaign whatever Sunday comes about. I don't agree with that. I completely disagree with that, which will probably not garner me any friends out there. I cannot stand sandbox play. It bugs the hell out of me. It really does. I hate it as a player as well, so it's not just a GM thing. For me, I've always been, I don't know whether it was to do with the person that got me into role-playing, or rather gave me my first role-playing experience, I think, but it was always about telling the story. The GM turns up to the table, he has a scenario prepared or a campaign prepared, it's a story, and that's what the players are telling. And you followed it. You're not always stuck to it. I mean, I'm a big fan of the adventure path format. A series of scenarios, a form of campaign, levels 1 through 20. Most published ones seem to be about 12 chapters, or so it seems, for most 20. And some people will call that railroading. They go, no, because you turn up and then it's basically one progression after another, after another, after another, until you get to the end. There's no player freedoms. Well, I disagree, because there's always room. If a player turns around and goes, right, the next step is for us to go to the Dungeon of Doom to recover the axe of the Dwarvish Lord so that we can defeat the goblin demon hybrid thingy, fine. But then the player can turn around and go, well, actually, I don't think we're ready for that. I think we need to get either a little bit more XP or we need to get some more magical items. So let's go to the Tower of Fear and let's do that. And the GM can turn up with a side scenario then. It needs to be like a small thing. But the players can then go and do that and come back. There's always room to fit in what players want to do. Providing that the players understand that the point of the game is to tell the story that has been laid out. But they can do it any way they want. It's not a case of going, right, this is an open world, and we can do whatever we want, and if we want to follow this particular plot, not. If we want to come into it later on, we can come into it later on. No, I've never liked that. It just seems like a really awkward way to play a role-playing game. When I, as a player, turn up to a table, I want to know that we've got a campaign, we've got a beginning, a middle and an end, and I want to tell that story. And pretty much every player I've ever known has that same approach. I've only known, I know a couple of people who do prefer the sandbox approach, but generally they're not in most of my games anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Pardon me. The next thing I'd like to comment on for this particular video was the Quantum Ogre idea and wandering encounter tables. I have to agree, I stopped using wandering monster encounter tables a long time ago. Mainly because they just end up being awkward. Because you might have your wandering encounter table for a dungeon. It might include some goblins, a skeleton, ghouls, cultists of the High Fnarg, whatever. But are those things all wandering around each other's domains within a dungeon? No. I'd much rather decide that something will, depending on where you are, is where something will turn up. If they make an awful lot of noise in the temple area, then it's going to be cultists of Fnarg. If it's going to be in the goblin area, you'll get goblins investigating. The idea of the Quantum Ogre thing, though, where that if there's going to be an ogre, whatever they do, they will encounter the ogre, I kind of dislike again. I like to have everything plotted. Assuming we're talking about sort of like a dungeon or story progression here. If there's a room with an ogre, then that's where the ogre is. It makes me sound very rigid, I suppose, but I'm not, because I am willing to adjust and change and alter things as I go along, especially if something turns out to be slightly too hard for the characters. But yeah, my point was just simply to say, kind of show a opposite sort of view to that, because I don't really know what it is about sandbox games. I think it's just a case of that for me, as a GM, the scenario is blood, sweat, tears, and possibly money if you've had to go out and buy one of these big hardback bloody books or whatever. Or you've written your own scenario, you spent hours slaving over it. Then really, if that's what you bring to the table, then that's really what the players should be playing. But you've just got to be prepared to give them some leeway to do things how they want to do. They don't necessarily have to walk the same path that the scenario was originally designed for them to do. But providing they understand that that is the scenario to be played. Anyway, that's just my thoughts on that, just giving my point of view and my sort of like opposite opinion. But good vid from Emergent Play. I suggest you check it out if you haven't seen it. Until next time, take care and good gaming.